Okay, hello and welcome to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from MSDynamicsWorld.com, and we're here for a session all about invoice automation for Dynamics AX. I am joined today by two speakers, Anna Tuyunen, who is the product lead for DoApp, and also by Mark Brousseau. He's an analyst and researcher on business process, and it is great to have him with us. As we get started today, I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. Please know that Anna and Mark would welcome your feedback and questions during today's event. I know they'll be making time at the end for those. And they also want to keep this interactive with your input through several poll questions that they'll be posing to you in the audience throughout the event. So please do be on the lookout for those. We'll be starting up with those very shortly. Also, you may notice on the right side of the webcast window here a media viewer block off to the right, and that is simply another way for you to get in touch with Anna and the DoApp team if you want to set up a separate call or have your own questions answered personally after this event. That just gives you an easy way to just fill in your information and have them reach out to sort of know exactly what you want to talk about separate from today's presentation. So without further delay, we are going to kick things off. I'm going to hand it off to Mark to start us off.
Hey, thank you so much, Jason, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. So the most important metric to most accounts payable departments is what? Full-time equivalent productivity. How much work can we get out of our frontline staff? This is over and over again the metric that accounts payable leaders tell me that they're measured against and they're measuring themselves against. And yet, when we talk about productivity in accounts payable departments, one of the last things we think about is the user experience. After all, in most organizations, accounts payable is the quintessential back office function. You all are the people in the basement with the lousy office furniture and the coffee maker that doesn't work so hot. We've got a heads-down factory-like setting, but that is going to change. And that's what our webinar is focused on today. 3 trends that are going to require organizations to take a fundamentally different look at how it is they manage their accounts payable processes. And we're going to show you best-in-class practices for how to transform your own operation and to get more payback from your investments in Dynamics technology. Before we do all that, we're going to start with a poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. We want to know, how would you describe the user experience of your organization's current invoice processes? Are they extremely positive user experience, a positive user experience, neutral, a poor user experience, or an extremely poor user experience? You feel bad for your own people. Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen. We're going to discuss the results in just a moment. So Anna, you're a former controller. Talk to me about the user experience from your perspective and why it's so important that organizations focus on this when they're trying to optimize their accounts payable operations.
Thank you, Mark. And hi, everybody. User experience for me means how the process feels like. So it's not about the fact that do you have a high-tech process or is it just on paper, but it's about how it works on your company.
Why is it becoming more important today that businesses focus on the user experience, Anna?
Well, as consumers, we're used to having kind of best applications, and we're used to the situations that everything works perfectly. But in the business situations, we're using cumbersome softwares. So we want to make even the business software fun to use so that people would actually love their work.
Fun. That's not a word that most people would associate with accounts payable. Is that out of reach for accounts payable departments?
No, that's what we're about to change.
So let's see how our attendees responded to the poll question. We asked you, how would you describe the user experience of your organization's current invoice processes? And you all said, 17% of you said that you would describe it as neutral. 13% of you said a poor user experience. 70% of you didn't answer. What in the world you've got to answer in the next question, which you're about to do right now. We want to know, how would you describe your organization's current level of invoice automation? Do you have a high level of automation with very few manual processes? Do you have a medium level of automation with some manual processes? Or do you have a low level of automation, all manual processes? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen. We're going to discuss the results in just a moment. So it's no secret, Anna, that the level of invoice automation has a direct correlation on the user experience. For those organizations out there today with highly manual operation, what would you say to them today?
Well, first we need to also define what does automation mean to you. What does that mean to that company that is using kind of paper-only process? So is the biggest time consumed in the part of digitalizing the paper invoices, or is the biggest problem in finding the correct persons to approve those invoices, or is it in the PO matching process? I think you first have to know the kind of what is your problem area, and then start fixing that.
And the best way to find out where you stand today is to start with your frontline workers, isn't it? Talk to me about that. How do you go about auditing your operation to find out where those problems are?
Well, you just have to kind of get that process streamlined. You have to know what is your goal of having, what is your goal process, and then see where it's lacking. So what are the discrepancies in the process you have designed into your company? Well, the result that you find out is usually that you don't have a process that exists, or nobody follows that process. So it's just the process that the controller has made for the big meeting in the spring, but nobody follows that.
That never happens, Anna. We asked our attendees how they would describe their organization's current level of invoice automation. Good. Many of you leaned forward in your chairs and responded. Still not enough of you, but much, much better. But it looks like if I'm doing my math in my head, oh, the results are gone. Where did they go? There they are. Okay. So it looks like about 2/3 of the folks who responded said they have a medium level of automation, some manual processes. About 1/3 of you responded said you have a low level of automation. And just a small percentage of the folks on the line today say that you have a high level of automation with very few manual processes. The good news is you're all in the right place. Next slide, please. And the reason we're here is that many organizations have indeed manual or semi-automated operations. In fact, research from the Institute of Finance and Management conducted this year finds that in the United States, despite all the efforts we've put into electronifying our accounts payable departments, today about 29% of businesses still have what they describe as a low level of automation with lots of manual processes. 48% of businesses say they have a medium level of automation. That means that less than 1/4 of all businesses here in the U.S. say they have highly automated operations. And this creates lots of problems, which are displayed on your screen. In many cases, businesses are still manually keying invoice information and manually validating data. This is the number one contributor to those sky-high invoice processing costs. Depending on who your favorite analyst firm is, and I'm sure you have a favorite analyst firm, it costs somewhere between $8 and $12 on average to process a paper-based invoice. And about 60% of that cost is wrapped up in manual labor data entry. In today's highly competitive, slow growth economy, we can't afford that kind of overhead. But that doesn't stop the end of the story in terms of inefficiencies. In a paper-based or semi-automated environment, you've got the physical routing and retrieval of documents. This not only creates lots of hassles for your staff, but it introduces the opportunity to misfiled, lost, or even stolen documents. Here again, in a highly compliant environment, in an environment where we're focused on security like never before, this can't stand. We also have the case where many operations are still photocopying invoices and other documents for record keeping. We have staff literally chasing down, and I do mean chasing the sneaker brigade, I call it, invoices and approvals from employees on the other side of the building, maybe the other side of the country. This slows down approval processes, creates late payment penalties. It misses out on early payment discount opportunities. 70% of CFOs want to capture more early payment discounts. If you're in an environment where your staff has to physically chase someone to get approvals on invoices, that just can't happen. We've got cases where we have back and forth emails, calls, and faxes with stakeholders internally and externally. It's costing businesses about $3.60 to resolve each phone call from a supplier regarding invoice inquiries. This adds up. We also have to collect physical documents for auditors. We have to physically file and retrieve invoices and other documents. Holy moly, this is expensive. But more importantly for today's webinar, it creates a really lousy user experience. The last thing you'd think of in this kind of environment is fun. Next slide, please. The root of the problem is the way most of you are handling your invoice approval processes. At most businesses, invoices show up at a mailroom, maybe directly to a purchaser, maybe go to a finance department. Someone's going to review them, which takes about 1 to 2 days. Then somebody's got to go and chase down the approvals. They've got to code them, which can take anywhere from 5 to 10 days on average, and significantly more if somebody happens to be on the road, on vacation, on maternity leave, just ignoring their email box or physical mailbox. Then once we've got this approval, we're going to have to input it physically, manually into an ERP system such as Dynamics. It's got to be physically stored. And as expensive and time-consuming and lousy user experience all this is, we now have the case more frequently where invoices show up at branch offices, remote offices, maybe somebody in the field who actually is handed an invoice. This adds more time to the process. They've got to shove the invoice into an overnight delivery envelope, which adds cost to the process. And moreover, they've got to go take time away from their core activity in order to do all of this. So it takes a lot of time. This is the problem, and this is the number one trend that we're going to see in the market. Organizations want to get away from all this physically handling these documents, particularly those at remote offices. And that brings us to our next slide. And the way they're going to do this is the way we're doing things in our consumer lives. Anna said it. We're moving things to the cloud. Within 2 years, 1/3 of businesses will be using the cloud to review and approve invoices. This will clean the slate of that previous slide I just showed you. And while some of you out there right now are saying, wait a second, only 1/3 of businesses within 2 years? The fact is the cloud just showed up on the scene. And next year when we do this webinar, the numbers are going to be significantly higher because businesses recognize the power of the cloud. Next slide. And it's not just accounts payable solutions that are moving to the cloud. ERP systems are going as well. Within 2 years, more than 1/4 of businesses will be using a cloud-based ERP solution as well. In many cases, for the same reasons, they're migrating their invoice processing to the cloud. Next slide, please. And the biggest benefit businesses are seeing for this push to the cloud, well, number one, of course, little to no capital investment. The days of big license fees and big software, hardware, infrastructure expenditures all up front, destroying your capital budget, that ship has sailed. Today, cloud-based solutions make it more affordable than ever for organizations to transform their accounts payable processes. What's more, if you move to the cloud, you can do all of this with minimal IT involvement. You can have this capability without having to purchase and maintain expensive software and hardware. And that drives down your cost per invoice. It accelerates your ramp-up time. And most of all, in some cases, it helps reduce your risk. You're able to gain these advantages with greater assurance. You know that you're getting a solution you're going to be able to manage and execute with little risk. Next slide, please. But it's not just the cloud that organizations are leveraging in order to manage this remote work. It's also using that device which is probably within your arm's reach right now. That is your mobile device. Think about how you buy goods in your personal life. You're listening to a song on with your earbuds. You say, boy, that's a really cool Beyonce song. I think I want to download it. So then you take your earbuds out, you grab that phone that you were listening to the song on, you go online to the iTunes store, you look up some reviews of the song. Yep, other people liked it, so I know that I should buy it. Then you go and you buy the song, you download it immediately, you pay for it immediately, and you're able to own it and listen to it at your convenience at any time. You've done all of this without creating paper, without creating latency, and you've done it in an environment that's seamless and digital and completely convenient. It's on your terms. Well, why shouldn't invoice processing be like this? Why shouldn't it be, holy cow, fun? Next slide, please. And that's just what's happening. Today, mobile is coming into accounts payable departments. It's providing frontline staff with easy access to accounts payable information anytime, from any location, using a PC or a mobile device, and all of it in an easy-to-use, engaging digital experience that provides an optimal experience with optimal results. We take time, cost, and frustration out of the process, fundamentally changing the way we purchase goods. Next slide, please. And so when we look at where businesses are today with mobile technology, we find that within the next 2 years, about 4 out of 10 businesses expect to be using mobile technology to approve invoices. Folks, I'm here to tell you right now, I do a lot of road shows for IOFM, and I talk to users across the country, and this is the hottest topic. I don't believe these numbers. I think you're going to see businesses adopting mobile approval of invoices in far greater numbers, far faster than these numbers suggest. It makes too much sense, not just for frontline workers, but also for management who are on the road and who want that convenience not tethered to a PC. Next slide, please. The second trend that is transforming transforming accounts payable and requiring a fresh look at the user experience is the increasing complexity that most of you are facing in your departments. Today, the majority of businesses tell us that their accounts payable processing is slightly or significantly more complex than just 2 years ago. Next slide, please. And the problem is that businesses think the situation is going to get worse. Nearly the same percentage of businesses tell us that they expect their accounts payable processing to become even more complex over the next 2 years. This is untenable. Accounts payable professionals should be able to focus on errors and exceptions and not day-to-day complexity. Next slide, please. And there's several reasons for this complexity. The number one reason is high paper volumes. We can't get away from this here in the United States. We still have too much paper. And our statistics show that while the paper is declining, it's not going to go away. And that brings us to the second biggest driver of complexity in accounts payable, that diversification of how invoices arrive, those multiple invoice channels. We now receive invoices via email, fax, EDI, portals. We're seeing it through networks. Holy moly, organizations have to be able to manage all of those channels. And if you're sitting on a manual or semi-automated operation today, you better believe it's going to be very challenging for you to be able to normalize and process all of those different invoice streams. Additionally, we have remote approvers. We just talked about it. We're seeing more and more challenges with on-the-go approvers. Our economy demands that we have people on the road, and this creates challenges for invoice approval. We also have complex invoices. Suppliers have become savvier about creating invoices that include more detail on them, and this means that you have to be able to extract that information. We also are challenged by shared services. Bringing together different operational groups is creating complexities. Now we have multiple languages, multiple currencies, multiple ERP integrations, and in many cases, we haven't even automated the technology in those shared services environments. And so we need to find a way to manage this complexity in a way that doesn't burden, doesn't overwhelm our frontline staff, which would have a significant impact on their productivity. Next slide, please. And when we look at those paper environments, some of you out there right now are looking at yourselves and saying, yeah, Mark, but my staff is really good. They've been around for a long time. They're doing fine. But you can't get to where you need to go if you're relying on paper processes. Paper makes it difficult to track invoice history and approvals, to have those consistent policies and processes, to ensure segregation of duty, to ensure chain of custody, to be able to provide all of the data required for audits, particularly if you're trying to do business globally, to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley, to comply with PCI if you're accepting or making card payments, to prevent unauthorized payments. How can you really control and track in a paper environment who's making payments? And to safeguard stored documents. There's no telling who's reaching into that file drawer you have sitting out in the hallway. I don't care if you have that cute little key to unlock it. The fact is you're leaving yourself vulnerable. And so this is the problem we need to solve. This is what we need to overcome. Next slide, please. The third challenge that organizations are facing that is going to require a reevaluation of the user experience is the need for transparency. This is a laugh out loud one for organizations that are drowning in paper. In a paper-based environment, key information is not captured. Your data's all over the place. Information is not timely. And by the way, if you're reporting at financial close time at the end of the quarter, the end of the month, that's not timely. Systems are poorly integrated. We're rekeying information into Dynamics. Oh my gosh. We've got decision makers who can't access the information they need to make important decisions. Next slide. Compared to 2 years ago, nearly half of organizations tell us that their demands for real-time visibility into accounts payable information are slightly or significantly higher. The emphasis here is on real-time visibility. That means being able to tell at a moment's notice where I stand with my accruals, for instance. This is the fallout from the Great Recession. Organizations understand that they need to manage their cash better. And the place to go to do that is an accounts payable department. You have that data and those transactions flowing through. It tells you about the financial health of your organization. And you can't rely just on your ERP system to do that. After all, your ERP system needs that information to help it run effectively. So we've got to automate those processes that sit in front. We've got to automate accounts payable in order to get the transparency that the C-level needs. Next slide, please. And the reason the C-level is so interested in this is that cash flow analysis is their number one job. It's what's keeping them up at night. So undoubtedly, you've got someone from the C-suite coming to you on a regular basis, asking you for ad hoc reporting, to ask you to tell them where you stand on things. And this is going to increase because they need that visibility into cash flow, particularly in today's slow growth revenue environment. They need to focus on profit margins. They need to focus on spend. And if you want to do that, the place to go is accounts payable. Next slide, please. And that brings us to our next poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. We want to know, which of the following trends is having the single biggest impact on your accounts payable organization? Is it remote work? Is it increasing complexity of accounts payable processing? Or is it demands for reporting, demands for transparency? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen. And we're going to discuss the results in just a moment. So Anna, what's the single biggest reason that organizations are calling your company to help them with their automation?
Well, I think the biggest reason is to get the workflows streamlined so that your company knows who is approving and are all the kind of legal requirements fulfilled, and to have that happen smoothly as possible, so that you wouldn't have to always define the workflow how the invoice is routed. That at least, I'm not sure if that's the biggest thing, but that's kind of my favorite thing. And for that, we have done very interesting experiments already with new technology and with machine learning. With that, we could actually try and learn from our previous invoices how the invoices should be routed in the future.
What is the type of organization that's calling you? Are most of the organizations just paper-based? Are they semi-automated? Are they automated with old technology? Who are you hearing from?
Well, we have a lot of companies that already use e-invoices. So because we're Europe-based and now also working in the US, we also want to bring this e-invoicing to US as big it is in other countries. We know that the market is ready for this, and we know that there is a lot of interest towards e-invoicing. And this is because the keying in stuff just has to stop.
The keying in stuff has to stop. Yeah. We agree on that, Anna.
Yeah.
Knock it off, people. Let's see how our attendees responded to the poll question. We asked them, which of the following trends is having the biggest impact on your organization. Demands for transparency, 45% of you. Increased complexity, 36% of you. And 18% of you identified remote work. Let's talk to the people who had those demands for transparency on it. You were a controller. You were the person demanding those reports from accounts payable. What's the single biggest benefit from a reporting standpoint that automating accounts payable provides to a controller, for instance?
When I was working as controller, I think the benefits from the software we had was to get to know what is the bottlenecks on our process. So we were able to find the people who were actually sitting on their invoices and we were able to kind of solve why they are hogging those invoices and what can we make better in their lives so that they could approve the invoices faster. By this we actually got savings from cash discounts and without having to pay delayed payments.
So hopefully I have shown you why it is that you must rethink the user experience in your accounts payable departments. So now you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, Brusso, you've got us convinced. We're game. Now what do we do? Well, that's where I hand it off to Anna to talk to you about best practices in how to make accounts payable fun. Anna?
Thank you. I'll just skip a couple of slides, and here I go. Again, I will next show a few general slides, and then I will show a demo of our working desktop application and also our mobile application. And the mobile application will actually be released next week to app stores. And today I'll show the second to last version of our mobile app. And you can have a demo of the final version booked from us. And also if you want to see a deeper dive, for example, from PO matching, we're happy to set up a webinar just for you. Good. So, like I said before, as consumers, we only use the apps and web services that we think are good. And by good, I mean that there is a great user interface that makes our life more easy or fun. However, the corporate softwares are lagging behind and they are really old and slow, and I don't think there is actually a limit how bad they can be. In my private time, I would not tolerate the responding times of some of the applications I had to use in the past. And when you're working with those outdated softwares, you actually start hating the job. So this is what we are changing now with our new accounts payable software, the Do app. The key points in Do app I want to emphasize are the beautiful user interface that is fun to use, it's efficient, it's fast and truly mobile. And with truly mobile, I mean that you're able to finish the task in the mobile and you do not have to open your contract archives or mail history or file cabinets or wherever your kind of info for your invoice approval reference is. Second point is that we have been doing cloud softwares really long. And now that Microsoft is also doing this, we have really been able to use our experience in the design. As the third point is the built-in process automation. So my colleagues in the design team and we are AP people. And we have for the past few years done this software for the AP people. I have worked previously in all the positions in AP, from clerk to controller, and I've also worked as an AP process and software consultant for 5 years. We have also engaged all our current client database to the design process of the Do app, and we have met and interviewed AP professionals, especially in the US, and they have been part in designing this software. So that's why I'm really confident, or overly confident, that we're doing the things that AP and the approvers in the field want. So this is a process picture and explains how we connect to AX and what jobs AX does and what Do app does. So AX has the vendors, the chart of accounts, account structures, and POs. And this is data we use real time from AX. When the goods have been received, we can match an invoice to that in DoApp. So the process starts by receiving the invoices, and we have multiple invoice channels that can be used, and we hope that these invoice channels are automated so that you don't have to manually import invoices in many places, from many places. First of all, and the most important thing, is the e-invoice. So e-invoice is an invoice that has embedded the data beside the invoice picture. So we have the invoice details already as a data, and this means that no keying in is required at any part of the process. We get the information exactly how the vendor has keyed it in. So if there is any mistakes, it's the vendor's fault, not ours. I really feel that the market is ready for a wider adoption of this. Then there is the paper invoices. So you might have in-house scanning or external scanning through a scanning service, for example, and you want to transform your paper invoices into the digitalized form and use the optical recognition with that, the OCR technology. You can also email invoices directly to the system. So if you have them already in the email as PDF, you just resend them to forward them to our application, and it will be OCR'd in. And also, if you have a vendor portal, we can integrate to that, or we can set up a new vendor portal through partners. So when we open DoApp invoice handling page, the invoice arrival page, the AP either starts by importing the invoices, or the imports have already been done. And at that point, we kind of divide the invoices into two different piles: the PO invoices and the non-PO invoices. We call the non-PO invoices cost invoices. And we actually divide the cost invoices to kind of these normal non-PO invoices where you have to do the coding and the routing, and then to contract invoices. And in contract invoices, you kind of have the template for the invoice already in the system. The contract invoices are the reoccurring invoices, for example, like rent or cleaning costs. So we're able to match the invoices to that template and get them automated, so nobody has to approve the invoices unless there is a discrepancy compared to the contract. In the PO side, this is more familiar to people, so we're matching the invoice against the PO in AX and only route that into the approval workflow if there is a discrepancy compared to the PO. So here is the solution cornerstones. These are the foundation of the development work we have done, and these are the things I believe in. And first of all, the full integration means that we will not have unstable interfaces that might lose your data into thin air. We do not want to have interfaces that move outdated information from A to B once an hour or even more seldom. And we definitely do not want to upkeep master data in many places. So this means real-time cooperation with AX. The automation means that POs and non-POs are automated as much as possible. So even though you might have 50% or 80% of invoices as PO invoices, the little non-PO invoices that you have left could also be done with less work. Best practice processes of AP are embedded in the approval workflows and the other tools that we have. This is the result from that the software is not designed by the IT guy. It's designed by AP and business people and will continue to be so. The advanced technology means that we're experimenting with the latest innovations in Microsoft world. And I also already mentioned the example about the machine learning. So we have tried guessing the codings and the workflows based on the previous invoices that we have in the system. this is on our roadmap now, and I'm really looking forward to releasing something related to this in the near future. Here is a functional architecture of DoUp, including some of the components we are using. AX7 is a cloud solution in Azure, and DoUp is based on the same platform. So DoUp will not replace AX, but it will provide additional functionality. So standard AX features will be used whenever it's possible. Oh, sorry. We also use certain third-party solutions that we feel are the best in the market. For example, for the OCR scanning, we use a technology that has been developed for years rather than starting from the scratch ourselves. And the final touch of DoUp is the design of UI and the design for process that support the business needs. And this is the part where we put ourselves into the product. And now I would like to show you the actual software. Okay, here we go. So I opened my DoUp desktop application, and this is a web page. A web page I log into with the same credentials that I log into AX. Oops, sorry. And depending on my user rights, I can see now either my own invoices that are just waiting for action from me, or as an AP clerk, I can see basically I control the invoices of the company. And this is a multi-company view, so I can actually handle the invoices of many companies in the same view. So it's all the companies that are in the same AX environment. Let's start going over this section by section. So I'll first close a couple of sections just to have this clear view of one invoice. I'll open that invoice now. Now I have the header fields visible here, and if I would like to add some other columns, I can add them from the setup here. And when I have this one active invoice here in my handling area, I can always check the next invoices that I have in line. So these are the invoices that are still waiting for some actions from me. And if I want to change the invoice I'm currently handling, I can just kind of shift here back and forth the active invoice that I want to work with. One of the innovations that we have now in DoUp is that I can actually handle multiple invoices in the same time. So if I pick 2 invoices from here, I can lift 3 invoices on the same time to my handling area. So these are from the same vendor, and if I would, for example, know that these all go to the same person in the workflow that is visible here, I could, in the same time, apply that workflow for all these invoices. Or if I just know from just looking at the header information that these invoices are correct, I can approve them on the same time just by clicking the approve button with these 3 invoices in the active area. Now I'll move those 2 invoices back, and I'll continue working with this one invoice. I have now this invoice selected, and like I said, up here I can see the workflow that is related to this invoice. On the right side I can see the invoice picture. And when I click on these columns, or I go to them with the tab key, I can see that I have these quick filters up here. And these quick filters are meant for my previous invoice section, especially for my previous invoice section. And this is also a good innovation that we have, that whenever I am handling an invoice, I will automatically have the previous invoice of the same vendor, or actually many previous invoices from the same vendor on hand here. So if I want to check something immediately from the previous invoice, for example, copy the codings from the previous invoice, I can do that immediately. This is something that we have learned from talking with the AP people, that they tend to use the previous invoices as reference, and they would be able to use a lot of the information that there is in the previous invoices when they are handling the next invoice. I would, for example, like to copy the workflow from the previous invoice directly to this active invoice, and that I can do. When I am in kind of going through these fields, it's always suggesting me here if I would like to use an additional filter. So I can ignore that suggestion, or by enter key I can actually apply it so that I'm able to filter all my invoices, the next invoices and the previous invoices based on the value on that field. So if I just want to look at one company's invoices, I can do that and apply the filter easily. Okay, moving forward with this invoice data handling. So I can see now that my OCR has failed from the invoice number picking. So if I need to pick something from the invoice picture, I can just click and point and get that information in. This is typical for many OCR softwares. Then when I want to do the coding, I can start by adding a new coding line. And for AX people, they know that we have the possibility to code directly to ledger, project, or fixed assets. And now we're doing a ledger coding. When I open this drop-down, it is a real-time communication with AX. So it shows me exactly the account structure that I have in AX. I'll first choose one freight account, and it went to AX and retrieved the account structure for me, and it is telling me which dimensions do I need to fill with this account. So after that, I can just click on the dimension, and it is validating for me already the dimensions that I'm able to pick based on the previous selections. I'll divide the sum here, the amount, and I'll put the sales tax in. And again, we are retrieving the sales tax calculation from AX. So AX is calculating this to us. So you don't need to worry about the tax calculation in many places. If you have it correctly in AX, then it works perfectly here too. Then I'll add a new line. It will calculate for me the amount that I have left uncoded. And now I will choose another account. I'll choose the one starting with a 4. So it's from a different accounting group. So again, it goes and retrieves the correct dimensions for me. And you can now see that with this account, I only need to fill the 3 dimensions. So it's not allowed to fill the department with this account. Of course, the easiest way would have been to just copy these from the previous invoice and paste the lines from there, but sometimes we have to do new coding lines also. Good. Then about the workflow. So I'll select my active invoice here. I have this kind of pre-selected preset workflow here selected, which originates from the vendor. But I can, of course, select something else also. You can have hundreds and hundreds of preset workflows if you like, or you can have dynamic workflows where you always are choosing the persons who will handle the invoices next based on their user approving rights. I'll change, for example, to the approval workflow, and I'll change the person who is doing the approving, and then I can actually send the invoice for approval. Good. Then I got the next invoice in line, and then I would be able to handle the next invoice. But now I'll show you the mobile application. I'll open my phone. just a second. Now it doesn't start. It was working fine a minute ago. Well, these things happen. I'll still try for a couple of seconds.
While we're waiting, Anna, we have a question from an attendee that I thought we could answer right now. They want to know, does DoApp integrate with other Dynamics ERP systems, and how about systems other than Dynamics? So talk to me about integration.
So integrating to other ERP systems is definitely on our roadmap. So first, we are doing the AX 2012, and that is happening really soon. And next in line would be most possibly the other Dynamics ERP systems, for example, Great Plains and NAV. And after that, we're also considering other ERPs like SAP. It basically comes from the demand from the market. So if we have good cases, we are definitely interested.
So bring your checkbook and your item can move to the front of the product development roadmap.
Yes.
I think I see a mobile application.
Perfect. That's correct. Was able to reboot everything and got that working. So here is my my own phone. Oh, that was embarrassing that I actually showed that I have the Pokemon Go. But moving on to DoApp, and I'll now open my session inside DoApp. So this app shows the invoices in a stack of cards. So if I just want to flip through the invoices, I can do so. Or if I want to drill down and see the details of that invoice, the invoice picture, for example, and the workflow, I can do that also. I can add comments, and I can do the coding lines inside the app. If I want to add a coding line, the same thing happens here as was in the desktop version, that I'm easily able to get the validation against AX so that it retrieves really fast, as you can see, the correct dimensions which I would use with that account. So after that, it's really easy to just point and select and get the correct dimensions in when I have that structure correct. One also a cool thing that I think we have is the invoice history part here below. It doesn't have now history, but this again is one of our kind of innovations that for you to be able to actually approve the invoice in your mobile, I would like to have again the reference of the previous invoices from the same vendor here already displayed. So if I have here kind of the 5 past invoices from the same vendor that I have handled, it's really easy for me to check the prices and to check did I actually approve this invoice already, or did they invoice this thing in the last month's invoice? So I think it's really good that we will be able to have that as reference here. Because making a mobile application for invoice approval, it's not about inventing the most kind of easiest button to push and to be able to approve the invoices. It's about the fact that you're able to get the information when you're able to actually push that button. Good. And now returning to the front page. that is all from my demo.
Very impressive. If you have questions about the demo, and I see some coming in, feel free to send them to us now, and we'll get to them as time allows. And that brings us to our next poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. We want to know, which of the following do you believe is the single biggest benefit of accounts payable automation? Is it streamlined processes? Is it improved transparency? Is it faster cycle times? Is it less distraction for employees? Is it tighter integration with downstream systems? Or is it streamlined compliance and security? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen. And we're going to discuss the results in just a moment. Anna, we're hearing a lot more interest in mobile capabilities. Talk to me about what the prospects you're talking to are saying. What are the professionals who you're talking to saying they want to use mobile for and why it's so important to them?
Well, it's really important because of the remote work. So there won't be in a couple of years, you can't tie people down to their working places. So people are on the go all the time, and you just have to have the mobile app to approve the invoices. Also, we are working in a kind of multinational environment, so that the physical distance from people is also a big thing. So you have to be able to reach all the people and get the process moving, even though you won't see the people in real life.
One of the questions we have in our queue is related to this. They want to know how it is you can get users who are very familiar with a certain way of processing invoices to adopt something like this, which is much, much different. How do you manage change among a team? And obviously, as a former controller, you lived this firsthand.
Yeah. Change management is, of course, a big thing. I think it's the biggest change is when you're changing from a full paper to full digitalization, and on those cases, because I've been involved with that many times. I think after the first shock, if you spend time with the change management, nobody has complained. It's the way people want to work in the future. Losing the paper, losing the paper invoices and trying to pin down the right people, and that's just, nobody wants that anymore.
I don't think they ever wanted it. I think we just didn't have any options to get rid of it. We asked our attendees, Anna, which of the following was the biggest benefit of automating accounts payable? Streamlined processes and improved transparency were identified by 30% of our attendees each. Faster cycle times and less distraction for employees were each identified by 20% of our attendees. Let's take a look at some of the questions, Anna, shall we, that came in
Sure.
from our attendees. They want to know, do you handle three-way PO matching, accepting lines and charges from your OCR solution? Three-way matching is a big deal. Is that something that's on the DoOp capabilities?
Yes, sure, of course. We actually handle many kind of scenarios for PO matching. So we're able to kind of choose the way that we want to match the invoices. One type is that we actually can get the invoice lines in, and then we of course have the PO lines as comparison, and then we match them per line and check the quantities and check the prices. Or we can do it so that in some cases it's easier to get the kind of the invoice totals to match the very detailed PO side, so that you're actually relieving the keying in work or the OCRing work from the invoice line level, but you're still checking that everything match with every cent that there is in the PO lines. In the PO line side, we have actually we have invested a lot of time into the design of making the selection of the POs and packing slips and quantities really easy. So in that design, we want to make it as easy as possible to see what you have selected against that invoice, and you're able to very flexibly choose how many quantities you want to select from which packing slip. So it doesn't kind of limit the way you need to match the invoice. So we're not going to end up in that trouble anymore that we're getting invoices from part deliveries that usually are really hard to match against your system.
Another attendee wants to know, what if I want to store the invoices in O365 or handle workflows there? So in other words, what if, can Duop be a front end to other document management or archival solutions?
Sure. We actually have a kind of an API for example, the invoice pictures, and you can take the invoice pictures through that API to any software you like. For example, we have now the possibility from AX directly click on an invoice, the invoice ID, and open that in Duop. So you don't have to kind of move everything to AX database, for example, but you can access from AX the database in Duop. And this works with other softwares also.
So we're almost out of time. I had one last question for you, Anna. How does somebody get a hold of you if they want more information or to schedule one of those private demonstrations that you were talking about earlier?
Easily. You could have just said that next slide, please.
I think I just did in a roundabout way.
Good. So please visit our website, duop.com, and please book a meeting from now on your right side of this meeting window. And you can also find me in LinkedIn, for example. And I hope to see you in a couple of weeks. We are actually launching our software in Tampa in the AXUG, and we will have a booth there, and I'll be speaking in a session in there.
Thank you so much, Anna, for a great presentation. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Jason. Jason?
All right. Well, Anna, Mark, thank you so much for that presentation. A lot of fun, and for taking all those questions. We will wrap up there. Today's session has been recorded. We'll be making that available to all of you soon. Once again, thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you.